In this video, we will be building part 4 of our real estate platform using Ruby on Rails. But before we jump into it, I just want to have a quick look at what we will be covering in this video today. On the homepage of our application, we will be updating this top section to include a background image, and we will make the text white with a text shadow. And underneath that, then we will make the button green to make it stand out from the text. And also on this page at the top, we have the menu. So at this menu, we have made a grid structure, a bit like the content underneath, to align that better. And we've moved in the login and sign up buttons to the right of the page. We'll also be adding a latest news section to the homepage, and we'll add this title here for the latest properties. And along with the latest news, we have added this blog link to the top. And if we click on the blog page, we can see a list of blog items that we have created. And we click on that, then we have the details of the blog post. If we go back and click on one of the properties now, on the right side under the agent, we have this profile link. And we had this profile link in the last video, but we didn't have anything here for the profile itself. So on this page, we've added a top image, and we've added some details about the agent, how long ago they've registered on the website, a description. And on the right side, we have some metrics here about how many they have sold or have for sale right now, properties, and how many rentals have been made. And we can also then access the phone number and email the agent directly. And then at the bottom of the profile, we have these listed properties that are live on the website for that agent right now. So on the back end, then we've also added the ability to have a admin account. So we have two types of account right now. So once an admin logs in, they can see the list of accounts for the regular users, and the left side navigation has been updated for the admin accounts. In here, they can add new blog posts. They can also look at their profile and edit account settings. And later, possibly in the next video, we'll be adding the ability to create adverts from here. So before we hop into the video, I just want to remind you guys, if you enjoy this content, do give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'm also selling these MVPs on my website, so any of these applications I'm building can be purchased on the website if that interests you. Now, I understand that a lot of people are just looking to learn here, which is totally fine, and that's what YouTube content is for. So with that out of the way, let's hop back into our video. So the first thing we're doing here is setting up an admin Boolean value in our accounts table in the database. So we've created a migration for that, and now we will run the migration. And I do want to say at this point, there are multiple ways that you can set up different user types within the same Rails app. Now, most people would use the gem called apartment. So the apartment gem is a great choice if you're looking to build a multi-tenant app. And maybe we will cover that in a different video, but for the purpose of this video, I think just having a true or false value in the account table in the database is enough for us to just put together a very simple working admin account. But if you are building a more complex application with multiple user types and a lot of different data, then possibly using the apartment gem is the way to go. So getting back to our admin controller here, we are just creating the view for accounts, which will load up the accounts that has admin set to false. So that's going to be all the accounts that is not the admin, basically. And we'll create a function here called canAccess. So this will just give us a true or false value to see if the user should be able to access this content. So we only want to allow access to admin accounts for these views. So we'll create a before action to check that this is an admin account logged in. And if this user is not an admin account, then we will just redirect them back to the dashboard and give them a warning message. And if you're following along with this video, you should add the words "and return" at the end of this line. I forgot to add it when I was recording this, but it's just to terminate this function so that it does not run any other content from those views or those methods in this controller. So we want to redirect and then run the "and return" just to get them out of that controller. And let's just go ahead and set up a route here for our accounts page for the admin accounts. And once a user logs into our application, we want to detect if they are a regular user or an admin account. So within our main view, under our public controller, the first thing we will do here is just check to see if they're an admin, and then we'll set a different path if they're an admin account, so that they will automatically be redirected to that dashboard. So in our Rails console, then we can just manually update this admin account, and then we can go ahead and try this out. And now within our accounts view, I am going to output some basic information for each of these accounts. So we will iterate over the accounts instance variable here. So it will be an array of user accounts, and then we will just output some basic markup, some basic HTML here to wrap these values in. So we'll output the full name and have another column where we can add the email, and then a third column we will add for the date in here. So we can use the created at to get the creation date of that account, and we will output the day, the month, and the year. And then finally we can have a link to the profile of this user. So let's sign in and check this out. Currently we don't have any users aside from our admin user, so let's set one up really quickly. And we've got this confirmation email being sent. So if we try to log in now without doing that, it will tell us that we cannot log in yet. So if we go back to our logs, we can quickly just grab the link to activate this account. You can also do this from the Rails console, but it's just a quick way to do this is just to grab the link from the email and paste it into the browser. And that has verified the account, so let's log in. So we are logged in now as a regular user, so this is not the admin user account. And the menu on the left is the same as it was in the last video. So one thing we're missing here, going back into our admin account now, is the sidebar. So we'll just add that really quickly. And now we can go back to our sidebar navigation. So in here we're going to change things around a little bit. So we want some of the fields to be different for regular users compared with admin users. So we can do that using a partial. So we will render a partial based on the type of user. So now let's create this new navigation partial for user. And we'll just paste this in, and then we will create another one for the admin as well. And we just need to rename this user. That should have an underscore as it's a partial. And we can change this now to match the correct links for the admin account. So the first link in our navigation, we'll call it accounts. That will be the default. And in here, then we can have our blog posts and our advertisements, and we can probably change the icons for these too, but I don't think it matters right now, so let's just leave that. And now if we click on a user profile, we can see that the profile is basically blank right now. We just have a name for the user. So let's have a look at see if we can fix this. So the first thing to note here is that we should be really only doing this conditional for the partial of the navigation if the user is signed in. So we could do something like account signed in here to ensure that's happening. But it looks like something else is not quite right here. It's showing ID of nil at the top. So let's have a look at our logic here in the application view. So if the sidebar is set, so let's check. So we have got the sidebar set. So here in the set sidebar method, we can check if the account is signed in. And I guess the reason we want to do it this way is we want to show a sidebar for the current logged in user if they're viewing their profile. But if you're not signed in and you're viewing someone else's profile, then it makes more sense to not have that sidebar, because that sidebar is only for logged in users. So what I'm doing here, just to save some time, is I'm copying the entire show view for the property. So that's a property profile view, and I'm pasting it into our account, our profile view for the account. And we will go ahead and modify that as we go, but it's just to get all that markup in there quite quickly, and then we can just modify what we need as we go. So I think it's faster to do it that way. And so the first thing we'll do here at the top is we want to set a photo, like that will be a cover photo or a background image for that user. So as a temporary measure, I've set that top cover image as the first property image, but we are getting a different error here related to the agent details. So we have this agent summary on the right. So what we're going to do now is try to fix up that partial that we used for that. So we want to be able to pass in a value for that profile. So we will just change these instance variables first, and then we will pass in a value to this partial. And since we are sharing this partial, we will need to do the same thing on our property profile. So we'll just paste that in. And then we are also getting this error regarding the latest properties. So that's at the bottom of our profile. We will have this list of properties. So we need to populate that. So we can do that from our controller. And we can go ahead and just copy that from our properties controller, as we've used it in the property profile already. And we'll just modify this to fit our needs. And now, since we have already got this list of properties, we can remove this middle line here and this property instance variable, and we can just call the last property.last for our profile photo. And we will also need to remove this for sale query that we have here, this conditional. So we have this for sale, and we'll show text based on that. So in the case of our user profile, we really don't need that. So in place of this, we will output the full name of the user, and then we will have a company name underneath that. So we'll just double check the name of the column in our database, and we'll remove this extra code here. So now let's update the stats for this agent. So we want to show how many properties he has sold or how many he has leased. And we'll probably also want to include values here for those that he has not. So those are still open at this point in time. And for these values, then we will populate these in our controller. So we can say properties sold, properties leased, and we want to get a number for this. And then we will have properties for sale and properties for rent. So those ones will be still open and not closed yet, those jobs. So in order to get those values, we will use a scope for each of these within our model. So we'll just type this out for now, and we will go and set these up in our model in a few moments. So in our model, we need to create in a similar way to how we have this latest right now. We will set these up for these values. So we have for sale, we have sold, we have for rent, and we have leased. So in this case, we can remove this order, and we will just have a conditional here to say where the status is sold. And we can do that for each of these, but right now we don't have a status for properties. So ideally we want to hide properties if they are already leased or if they are already sold. So in order to do that, we will need to add this column to our properties table. So we will create a migration to do that now, and we will add list field as a string. And we can also add a default value here, and we can call this available, so that will apply to both properties that are for sale and those that are for rent. So now I'm just tidying up these values to make them match. So we have sold, available, leased, available. And since we use a Boolean value to determine if a property is for sale, we will need to also check for that in this scope. So we'll say for sale false for the rentals, and we can do that again for the for sale properties. So if that for sale value is true, and that should be all we need really to get this working. So now back in our profile view, we can finish adding these values to reflect those new scopes that we've added. So now that we have 4 different columns here, we should really be changing this to a class of col3 here, so that we can have these spread out evenly. And we want to return a count for each of these scopes that are being called. Let's also remove this for sale conditional for the mortgage repayments. And we can just add some text here called properties. I think that's good for now. And we can remove the property name and change this to account.description or details even. I think we don't have a value set up for this yet. We can just check in our schema file just to see, but there's nothing there for that yet. So we can go ahead and add that field to our accounts table in our database. So we're creating a new migration, and we'll call it details, and that will be a text field. So that allows us to have a longer description in there. So let's run that migration. So now let's add this field into our edit registration view. So we'll add a text area field for the details, and try this once again. And we need to remove this for sale condition here. So that's at the bottom of our profile. So let's just delete this quickly. You're also going to take out this iframe. So we're getting an error here for the new message dialog that pops up. So let's see if we can figure this out. So in the stack trace here, we can see that there is a send email modal. So if we go back to our profile, we'll look for that. So we got this send email modal, and we need to be passing in this agent. In this case, it is called account. We're using the account instance variable, and we'll just change this to remove the alias. So we can do this by the find method. See if we can do this all at once. And we will also need to do the same for the property show view. So let's just copy and paste that. And that's it working this time, which is good. So it took a lot of tweaks to our template that we copy and pasted in, but at least it's working this time. So we can change this title at the bottom of the page. So this is going to be all properties from this agent. And we can say view all properties. And maybe we can even just make this current properties, because whenever a property is sold or leased out, we don't want to be showing that on the site anymore. So we want to remove those completed listings. So let's just call this current listings by this agent. And since we don't need this profile link anymore, as we are currently looking at that profile of the agent, we can actually remove this from our code. So let's do that now before we move on. And another thing we can do here is remove this properties on and this section on can I afford the property. So it doesn't really apply here, so we can take this out. But before we do that, we will also remove the border and bring that down to the top of the description area. We'll apply some margin and padding just to keep that spaced out a little bit. So that's looking pretty good. And then we will see the description here once we log in and complete that. So let's add our description to our account. And we're seeing a bug here. We have misnamed something previously, so we can take off this field at the end of the details name. And we're missing something here. It looks like we need to set the sidebar when editing an account. So let's add that to our application controller. And we can add a conditional to this to say that if the account is signed in, we will show the sidebar. And that way we don't see it when we sign up on our sign up page, which is a public facing page. And then finally we need to include this field, the details field or column, into the application controller. So we're whitelisting that field. So let's try this out. We've just put in some dummy text. And now let's go back to our property profile. And it looks like we've missed something in our update a little bit earlier. We took out the profile link, and really we should be doing that only if it is on the profile page itself. So we can modify this template. So what we're going to do is create a new file for this. So we will have one version of this contact details for the property show view and then one for the profile view. So that way we don't have to add too much logic into the view file itself. So we'll just load the appropriate one depending on which page is being visited. So that button is back again now, so that looks good. And if you visit the profile, we can see that we have got new description and we also have just the call and email buttons. So that's exactly what we want. And up here at the top, we can add some information such as how old the account is or how long it's been registered. So let's add some info for that now. And we will use the created at date and the time ago in words command to output a readable date since the account has been registered. And we're just going to mute that text to make it less obvious to the user. So it's not like the primary information, but it's kind of good to have information. And now I want to take these icons or this information here that we have right now and move it to the right side of the page underneath the agent details. So I'm going to try to put this 2 columns wide, 2 columns at the top and 2 columns underneath. And I'm going to remove the icons too and just try to make this a bit cleaner in terms of information to the user. So make the text bigger, maybe style it up a little bit, but basically just keep it quite simple and information based. And I'm using multi-cursor here, so if you want to do that, you can just hold down the command key and click on multiple lines. That's if you're using Atom Editor on Mac. The commands might be slightly different on your machine, but this saves me a lot of time for editing multiple lines of information that is quite repetitive. So we're just putting this into paragraphs, and we will also try to fix up the margin on this. Previously we had that pushed away from that line on the property show view. So I just want to clean this up a little bit, try to make it more straightforward. And I think we can actually remove the border around this contact details box to help create more space. It seems quite compressed at the moment. And we'll remove this button block, try to get these two elements in line with each other. So we can change the column width on these columns. And we can center align these columns using the bootstrap class, justify content, and we'll just remove that margin on the bottom, reduce it down a little bit. And we can add an icon here for the email as well, so in a similar style that we have for the phone. And now I want to increase the width of these columns, so we'll make them the half size. And we can center align the content using the text center class. And I'm just trying to improve the styling here so that it matches the same width as the contact details above. So we will play around with this a little bit, try to center align these columns and see how things look. So while I go ahead and play around with this and try to style this up a little bit more, I just want to remind you guys that I'll be creating a lot more apps like this in the future, so if you enjoy this content, do subscribe to the channel. And I have been getting quite a few people inboxing me and dropping me messages on different channels, mentioning that they don't really find that much Ruby on Rails 6 content out there right now, so that's something that I will probably try to focus a little bit more on. So that's starting to look a little bit better now. We've got the same width for the top and bottom sections. So let's just try to make the text a little bit larger to stand out for the user. And we can do that using the class. We can attach a class onto these paragraph tags to make that work. So let's just make these a little bit wider first. And it looks quite reasonable so far. So we can add a class here for each paragraph just to make the text larger and clearer for the user. So let's do that for each of these. And that's starting to look pretty good. I'm happy with that. And now I just want to add a custom image for this top cover image for the user. Now that's something we need to add to our database. So right now we just have the one image, which is for the profile photo. We want to add a cover image to their profile. So we'll create a new migration for this, and we will handle it in the same way that we did with the original profile photo. So let's go back to our device edit account view, and we'll add a new field for this. Let's just duplicate this and call this cover image. And we'll also need to add this in the controller, so whitelist the cover image and the cover image cache. And also within the account model, then we need to duplicate this uploader. So I'm just going to log in now and add the cover image to see if this works. So that has been saved. I don't know if you noticed there, but the pop-up message, the success message, is not quite right, but we will get round to fixing that at another time. It's still showing the welcome message from signing in. So you can see here from the logs that the file has been saved for the cover image. So let's update this value at the top of our profile. We'll pass in the account, and we'll create a new helper method for this called cover image URL. So I'm going to copy and paste the existing one we created in the last video and just tweak it to fit for our accounts. But first we'll create a new helper for our profile. And let's drop this in. So we'll be using the cover image instead of photo. So now let's go and try this out. We'll go back to our profile page and we can see our new image here at the top. So I'd saved out an image from Unsplash just to test this. So it's looking pretty good right now. I'm happy with that. It was fairly quick to update. So now the next thing I want to look at is these numbers at the bottom right here, these stats for the agent. In order for these numbers to be correct, the agent needs to be able to update the status of each property. So in the case of a rental property, they need to be able to say that it's now been leased, or if it's a property for sale, it will be able to say that it has been sold. So we will add a new field for that when they edit the property. So let's go and find our form for the properties. So just quickly looking at the schema, we can see that the status is available here by default, and if it's sold, then the status will be sold. But yeah, so let's go back to our form and try to get things set up here. So we'll duplicate this code for the drop down, just like it is in the for sale, but this time it will be for the status. And we can actually pass this in based on the output of the for sale. So if the property is already saved as a for sale, then we will pass one set of options, and otherwise then we will pass options that reflect the rental property. So we could create a helper to return these values, but we will just do it directly above the field, just for simplicity here. And I'm just checking to make sure that these have the right case. So they are being stored at lowercase, so I just want to keep it the same way. So on the front end they will appear capitalized, but in the back end they'll be saved as lowercase. And then the default value will be the property.status. So let's try this out. And you can see that it has both values, but I think we should probably, well, firstly we'll set the status in the controller to whitelist the field, but I think that these values can be reversed. So by default it's leased at the top, when really it should be available first and then leased underneath. So let's switch these around because I think it makes more sense to do it this way. Okay, and let's try this out. So that's been saved, and we can confirm it in the logs. And now once we click on the profile link, we should see that these numbers have changed. And now we can see that one has been leased. Previously that was for rent. So that appears to be working. And now we can have a look at this blog post section. So currently we don't have a blog post in our app, so let's create this using the scaffold, and we'll pass in some fields that we want to be storing for our blog posts. So we'll store the title, the URL, the summary, and the body text, and we'll have an active, which is a boolean value, and then we will have a image, which is a string, and this should create a whole bunch of files for us. So by default it's created the migration already, and we can set the default for the active to be true so that they are shown by default, new blog posts. And we'll run this migration and have a look at where things are at. So in the post controller, We'll want to add a very simple authentication to ensure that the admin account is signed in. So we can just borrow this from the admin controller directly. And in fact, we could actually even move this to the application controller and set it as a helper method. And that way it would be accessible to all of the controllers. However, for now it's fine. We will just keep going with this method in the controller as it is. So we'll add a authenticate account check to ensure that a user is signed in. So when we use the scaffolding to create these files, it inputs a lot of boilerplate code. So it covers you in scenarios where you have JSON or HTML. So in most cases we don't need the JSON. So I'm just removing some of these for the create and the update methods. So now I'm going to go to the admin sidebar and create a link here for the blog post. So we have a dummy link right now. So we'll just use a Rails link in place of this. It'll point out to the posts path. And it looks like our scaffolding command has placed some style sheets in here that we don't need, so we'll just delete those. And we'll need to include a sidebar on this posts page. But first I'm going to ensure that only admins can update this page. So we will use the method that we did inside the admins controller. And we can limit this to only certain pages. And in fact, you can actually reverse this and say that except for the show view. So everything else will be admin view. Only admins can edit, create, and delete these posts. So now let's go to our form view and we will style this up a little bit using the bootstrap classes. And it looks like I've replaced too many instances here, so I need to be a little bit more careful when doing this find and replace. So I'll just undo that. So you can see here it's got the text form field. So let's change our find and replace. So let's add the brackets around this. Okay, looks much better. And I'm just going to add some dummy information here just to test this out, see if it works. So it doesn't look pretty right now, but we're just wanting to see how it looks on the front end more than anything else. So we'll also add this image to the post so that we have a field for image already, but we can just change this to photo uploader. Okay, and we should probably just copy and paste this field from the properties into our form. And we can see here that the image is already set now. It's got this address, Amazon AWS address. So that's good. And if we sign out now, let's try to get this updated on the front end to make this blog post work. So first let's update this link in the navigation. So currently we have got a dummy link here that says news. So we will create a proper link for this. And we can add a new link here, but we'll need to set this up in the routes file. So the config routes file will add in a link for this. And we can name this however we want to, but I think blog is okay for now. So this would be latest posts, the blog path, and we'll need to create a method for this in our controller now. So we want this to be separate from our index method because the index method will be used in the back end when we're adding and updating and deleting posts, but this will be a front end. This view will be used on the front end only, so it'll just be displaying the post to the user. So we're gonna add a scope in here to be only selecting posts that are active. So in a way we're doing a soft delete here. If a post gets deleted in the back end, we want to mark it as inactive. So we'll update the active value to be a false value, and those posts really shouldn't be showing on the front end, so that's why we are creating that scope within our model. So going to the blog page now, the link is working, but we need to put some content on there. So I'm going to copy and paste this Jumbotron element here from the homepage and just put some dummy information in. And I'm going to remove this button and then just try this out. So it looks pretty good, but I think we can make the headline a bit smaller. And then underneath we will have a list of blog posts. So this will be a title and some summary text and a link to the post. So I'm just creating some simple layout code for each of these posts. So we will wrap each post in a row with a column inside. So just using the bootstrap classes here for these elements. And then we can have a paragraph tag, or even, I think it makes more sense to have h2 tag for the SEO benefit. So these titles will be headlines. And then we can have a summary text in the paragraph tag. And then finally a link to click to view that post. And for this link, then we can add the class to make it look like a button. So that will point to the post path, and we'll add the button class. So we still need to set these posts within the controller, and we'll use post.active to do this, but it is giving us this error about our scope. So I think we've made a mistake in here with this arrow. And now we can see that it is working, but the styling needs some improvement. So our arrow is not quite working right. We were hoping to have a greater than sign on the button. And we'll wrap a container around this whole list of blog posts. We'll also need to fix the class on our buttons. And that's looking pretty good, but we can probably take this arrow out as it's not adding much to the button. And then underneath we can just add a horizontal rule, so just to separate multiple entries. Now our show view, once we click on that read more, is looking pretty awful right now. So this is just the boilerplate code that was generated when we created the scaffolding. So let's remove some of this and try to make this more presentable. So again, we will copy this top section and put our headline or our title at the very top. And we'll remove this for now. That looks much better already. But at the top here, we could put a date that the post was created at. So that would be maybe some useful information for the viewer. And I'm just trying to improve the styling of this sub headline. So it's looking not bad, but it just feels a little bit out of alignment. So I'm going to place a padding on this to try and push it in a little bit. And it's not bad looking. So the text underneath, we'll try to put a link at the bottom, and that will go back to the main blog post page. Open the blog path. That'll be view all or view latest blog posts. And we will put a paragraph tag around that, and then we will add basic formatting for our body content. And I think that's enough for now for the blog. It's really simple. It kind of works, but we can update the navigation again. So maybe we'll change this to be blog. And now we're going to go back to our homepage and try to style this up. We'll also want to add in a latest posts section for our blog. So let's have a look at that now. So I'm just going to copy the latest properties list, and we will set up a new partial for this under posts. So call that list, and then we will pass in these posts. So let's create this new file, and we will copy in this code from the existing one. And we'll just change the values here. And we'll have a thumbnail here also, but we'll have to pass in the post instead. And we'll change the link also. So let's output the title. And we'll link to the post path. We don't need any of this information about the rooms or parking. So we'll just output the summary here. So just double checking everything. We do need to put this into the controller. So we'll need to create post.latest. And then we can just copy this scope from the property model and put it into our post model. So this is going to sort them descending in based on the creation date. So let's try this. And we have an issue with the photo, so we're currently using the same helper that was used in the properties list. So let's create this in the post helper so that we can use the proper column name. This will be post.image, and that is good for now. So let's just update this in the partial. And that's working, so we can see the proper image, the title, the summary. So let's add a title above this. So this would be a heading to say it's the latest news. And we want to include that in the container so it gets aligned correctly. So wrap this in a row. And that is working now, but we can improve the spacing or the margin. So we'll put a bottom margin on this, and it looks pretty good right now. So we're missing an image here on our blog view page. So let's add that and align that to the right. and we will use the URL from the thumbnail, and you can see that's looking pretty good right now. So back to the home page again, we will look at improving this top section now, and we can just delete some of this old text because we had just put in some really basic text before. So we'll just make something really simple up here. So you can change the message here to be with anything you like, but I'm just going to keep it really simple and include a few keywords such as apartments, condominiums. And then we will change this button and make it green, so we'll do success. And we will say view latest properties. So I'm going to add an ID to this so that we can attach some styles to it. So we'll call this home banner. And then in our style sheet we will set a background image for this. So I've already saved out a background image, actually two background images here for home and blog. So for this I'm going to use the home image, and we want to say that it doesn't repeat this image and align it to the center on both the horizontal and vertical axis. And then we'll also make the text color white. So this is for the inner layer, the Jumbotron, and you can see that that is working, but the text is a little bit hard to read here, so I'm going to add a text shadow to see if that helps. So we'll just put a light shadow, and I think we need to make it darker because it's not really helping so much, but we just need that on the header and the paragraph tags. We'll wrap that inside that, and that's starting to look a little bit better. So that's a slightly darker color for the shadow. We can add a background size to this top section to see if we can make it fit better at the top. So it's quite wide at the moment. It's just scaling by itself. So let's see if we can do something here to make it look a little bit better. So I'll just set the background size. I can move this text down. So I'll set the background size to cover, and I think that's kind of pulled it in a little bit. You can see a little bit more of the image. So one more thing we can do here is add a title for the properties at the top. So we'll just copy and paste that. We'll call this latest properties. And that looks pretty good. I'm actually really happy with this homepage right now. So I think the last thing we can do to finish this off is align this menu at the top. And I'm going to move this login and sign up buttons over to the right and get rid of this little fake search box that we have. So just to try and finish off that top nav a little better. So we can add a container inside this nav, and that will fix the alignment issue that we're seeing right now. So the property finder text at the top left, basically our logo is aligned now with the left side of the page, which is good. And I'm just deleting that search box. And now I will separate the sign up and login buttons. So we've got the log out, log in, sign up. So these will be moved over to the right. And then I will change these to have a float right class, and there will be a button. So the sign up will have the green button, and for the login it will be the secondary, which is a gray button. And we'll add a little bit of a margin just to separate those two buttons. So let's try this out, and it looks pretty good actually. I'm fairly happy with that. Now there's a bit of an issue here on mobile. So on mobile the buttons are floated to the right, but we really don't want that in mobile, so we can actually add the sizing to the float class itself. So in this case it will only float if the screen size is bigger than mobile size, so smaller or above. So finally then on our blog page we will add a background image in the same way that we did on the home page. So that will just be the last thing we do in this video, just to round things off. So we already have the image saved in our assets folder, and we will just duplicate this code. So actually the header one and the paragraph tag we can keep, but we want to duplicate the banner part. So we can wrap a class, we can add a class to both of these, so they both share the style for the header and paragraph text. It will be main banner class, and we will just add that to our blog as well. And then for the blog style, we will duplicate the background. So let's try this out. And that's pretty good. First time it looks pretty good, so overall pretty happy with that. So that's going to do it here for this video. Hopefully you guys have found this helpful in some way, and if you enjoy this content, do subscribe to the channel and give a like to this video. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.